We are in Strasbourg in the European Parliament at the June Strasbourg plenary session of the Parliament, and my guest is Christian Tereș, MEP from Romania and member of the European Christian Political Party. And the topic of our discussion today is the concept of interconnectivity as an instrument for building peace in Europe. Now, after the Second World War, the world order was built by statesmen of the Western Hemisphere on a concept of prosperity through peace. And they understood that lasting peace can only be built if prosperity is shared among the countries that are involved in this cooperation. And as we very often discuss this, and for ECPP, this is a very fundamental concept, how the founding fathers have created and established this European cooperation. They were Christians, they were Christian Democrats, men of faith, who understood how important peace is, how important prosperity is in bringing about peace. And this is why we very often refer to the EU as a peace project. Now that the old world order is, well, crumbling or being rediscussed,
Shaken.
Yes, could we now take this new concept of interconnectivity as a new instrument for creating peace?
I think the introduction that you made is pointed out exactly where we were and the direction that we are going towards. If we look back, this idea of peace through prosperity was the foundation of the European project. And this prosperity came because certain resources were placed under a super state authority, making sure that the countries will not use coal and steel, for example, to wage war against each other. That was one condition. The second was the free movement of goods, services, people, and capital. That was the idea that was the foundation of the European project. The distances were not that big at that time. So at that time the issue of interconnectivity was not that big, but the issue of freedom of movement was. But now in 2026, we are in a different environment because of globalization. You might agree with it or not, but I don't like globalism, but I'm just taking note of
its reality
of globalization, right? Because you have this economical relationships between countries, that are at different corners of the earth, right? So this is proving again the importance of interconnectivity between these countries. And one of the, at least in the case of Europe, one of the major country that is providing goods and services up to an extent for Europe is China. The other one will be India. So if you look on the map, the distance is huge between the two continents, pretty much. So it's not, we don't share the same border with China nor with India. So the question is, how do you ship? How do you bring all those goods? How do you move all the goods, all the shipments?
Across the Eurasian continent.
Exactly. So this is a chance right now, talking more and more and engaging with these countries, not only with the end of these corridors, like any country from Europe and China or India, but with all the countries in between.
So Central Asia, Southeast Asia,
South Caucasus, and this is, if we talk about the so-called middle corridor, that goes from China, Central Asia, over the Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Black Sea, and then Europe, Romania, or Bulgaria. Or the same corridor could go from Azerbaijan via Georgia, Turkey, Europe, or Azerbaijan, Armenia now, Turkey. And we will get back to Azerbaijan and Armenia. So this is the middle corridor. But there was another corridor that is developed after 2023 based on the Abrahamic Accords signed between many Arab countries and Israel,
Middle East,
to
Gulf
normalize
countries.
to normalize the relationship, to recognize each other, and then this idea of the so-called IMEC flourished, the India, Middle East, European Economical Corridor.
This would be the Southern Corridor,
the
compared to
equivalent
the
of Southern Corridor. So what that corridor is trying to do, I have a map here in case they can, show it. So we have the so-called Northern Corridor that goes from Asia to Russia. So the purpose right now is to kind of ban that corridor. In other words, to sanction, in our case, to sanction companies using that corridor, because Russia is making money off of us by allowing the transit of these goods from China to Europe. So this will make all the goods from Northern Corridor to move to the so-called Middle Corridor. Here, all the countries that will be engaged in this Middle Corridor have the chance to flourish economically, politically, diplomatically, because they are dependent of each other, and we are all dependent of each other. Who knew in Europe up to a few years where Uzbekistan is, or Tajikistan, for example? Now, there's more and more engagement between Europe and these countries, which is a great thing.
Although there was the old concept of the Silk Road, no? And
yes,
if I understand correctly,
exactly.
The Middle Corridor is more or less covering the Silk Road.
We in the West, we call it the Middle Corridor. China is calling it, Belt and it's part of the Belt and Road Initiative, which is a bigger project, but it was known as the Silk Road. And then you have in the south, this is the oceanic route that goes from China over the Indian Ocean and all the way to Europe through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and then the Suez Canal. The problem with these 2 points, these are two choke points, because
and now recently we have seen how difficult it can be to pass trade through choking points.
Exactly. So that means higher costs, more time. This is the reason why, especially because of the Houthis here in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait,
in Yemen,
many of these shipments, they go all the way around Africa to Western Europe. That's more time, more money, cost-wise. So this is proving that in order to ship goods from China to Europe, the shortest route is this Middle Corridor. It's taking about 2 weeks to ship everything compared to a month or 2-3 months, if you take the longest route. And in the case of India, the so-called IMEC, again, it's providing or is giving the chance for Indian goods to be shipped to the European market, bypassing these 2 choke points, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Hormuz Canal. But exactly these corridors, which are a need, I would say, for economical development, they are also a great opportunity to build a long-lasting peace. Because 2 countries that are at war, they will not be able to have a corridor that they share, because, you will not have security, stability, peace in that region. So 2 countries that were at war up to a few years ago, and they killed each other for decades, Azerbaijan and Armenia. Now, due to President Trump, but it was not necessarily President Trump's idea, it was a European idea, but the Europeans could not get it
There's not much European
all the way to the end.
Region,
so, Trump found out about it and he embraced it, and that's, he's working in the so-called TRIP corridor, the Trump Road for International Peace and Prosperity, which is trying to connect Azerbaijan via Armenia, with Nakhchivan, and then Turkey.
That's the exclave territory.
I even have another map here. This is the map, a map of Armenia. So down here in the south, they are building this rail, 42 kilometers, to connect Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan through Armenia. Now, this is a chance for 2 nations, 2 countries, in this case Azerbaijan and Armenia, to work together, to cooperate, and prosper together, and implicitly have peace. It's very interesting how how the situation is changing, because you hear a lot of politicians for a very long time look at the situation in Ukraine. Oh, we want peace, we want peace. Obviously that every or any reasonable person, not like a lunatic like Putin, right, wants peace. The question is, how do you achieve that peace? Now, one way is to, give up and say, you know what, you can conquer my land and then we will be slaves, but we'll have peace. That's one option, right? I don't think we want a world like that, because we've been through two world wars during the 20th century where exactly, some countries push for that, right? So that's off the table. The other option is to fight all the way to the end, which is exactly what we see right now in Ukraine. The third option is to find a way for these countries, to cooperate with each other.
Now, the elections in Armenia recently,
exactly,
and the victory of Pashinyan, they are quite... it can fill us with optimism that in Armenia now there is a big election victory of those forces which want a quick peace with Armenia. Perhaps the normalization of the relationship with Turkey,
yes,
which is another long-standing conflict in the region between Armenia and Turkey. And does this Armenian election facilitate the acceleration of such a cooperation in the region?
Up to a point, yes. And the reason I'm saying that is that at least based on what was said so far, in order for Azerbaijan to sign the peace treaty with Armenia, because what was signed on October 8, 2025 at the White House was a memorandum of understanding between the two countries. So there's no peace deal yet.
Yeah, it was a ceasefire.
So the precondition of the Azerbaijani side is for Armenia to amend, to change its constitution, because they have in their constitution, in the preamble of the constitution, a reference to the Nagorno-Karabakh region, which is part of Azerbaijan. And based on the Armenian constitution, the claim is that that land belongs to Armenia, right? Well, according to the international law, that piece of land is part of Azerbaijan. Yes, there was an Armenian population in the region, but that says, they had wars over there for decades. It's a long history behind, created by this madness that the Russians created everywhere where they
under the Soviet Union,
exactly, even before that. During the Tsarist empire. But the bottom line is, according to the international law, Karabakh, it's a region or part of Azerbaijan. But in the Armenian constitution, it stated that that's part of Armenia. So Azerbaijan said, okay, we had many wars. At the end, we won. We want peace, but you have to amend your constitution. Now, Pashinyan won the election,
but
he will be able exactly.
He will be able. Majority, yeah.
He has a majority, but he doesn't have a constitutional majority in the Armenian parliament to start the process to amend the Armenian constitution. So it remains to be seen if there will be wise members of the Armenian parliament from the opposition that will really understand the chance that they have to amend the constitution and to have this peace deal signed between the two countries, because it's going to be not only win-win for both of them, but it will be
a game changer.
Exactly, a game changer. And Armenia, which is right now, or it was up to a few months ago, totally isolated, because
and dependent on Russia.
Dependent on Russia and Iran. Because Armenia was not kind of officially engaging with Azerbaijan nor with Turkey. So in the north part of Armenia, you have Georgia. In the south part, you have Iran, right? So in order for Armenia to trade with the whole world, they either use Georgia or they use Iran, right? Because the other two neighbors, they had no relations with. But now the situation is improving. They are working. I have to say that I talked to every side, and it's I even congratulated them privately and publicly for this effort that each side is going through, in order to kind of, forget certain things from the past because they had a bloody history there.
Oh, yeah. Even in the 90s, it's a very
Exactly.
recent history. It's in our memories.
For us who are not, personally detached from the region, we look kind of more objectively. But for someone who was there, who had relative skill, and on every side, it's not
difficult.
that easy, But they are making an effort. And this is something that we really need to take into consideration. Every side is making an effort because you had deaths and wounded people on both sides, not just on one side. So the idea is, are you stuck in the past, or do you want to move forward in the future and for the future? And this is and everything started because here's the key. From this interconnectivity project that it's connecting Azerbaijan, Armenia, Nakhchivan, and then Turkey, or back to Armenia. There are different rail roads that are projected in the area. So this is one example where two countries that were at war not too many years ago, because they even had a fight in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, right? The final one.
Yeah, the second one in the.
Because of this interconnectivity opportunity, they realize that they have more to gain by engaging economically than by killing each other. And this is something I've been, invited to many forums and gatherings and occasions to talk. And this is exactly what I'm saying. The European project started from the premise that if we, share certain things together, and we work together, we open our borders among ourselves, and we allow this free movement of goods, capital, people, our economies are going to flourish. And if the economy is more prosperous, then people don't want to kill each other, right? We see this the same idea implemented in Southern Caucasus right now between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and we can see this implemented among other countries, in the Middle East, for example, in Central Asia. And this is where we need to go back to the old school of diplomacy and international relations.
Could this be the geopolitical EU that Ursula von der Leyen spoke about a couple of years ago, or is that going a bit too far?
I have a problem with von der Leyen.
Well, that I know, but the geostrategic...
I have a problem with von der Leyen, and I have a problem with how many of these bureaucrats and scholars in Europe are seeing Europe. So if you study, political science, for example, you will find this definition about Europe, that the power of Europe comes from regulations. In other words, we are a normative power. So we like to regulate, to normate, right? Everything. Well, this is not power anymore, it's weakness.
Yeah.
Because instead of projecting power, projecting prosperity, projecting vision, projecting real values, not gender ideology and all this madness that is going on right now, we project what? More laws, more regulations, more directives. And this is not how you lead.
Well, in the absence of a common foreign policy and common
so the reason why I'm saying that
this is what remains.
Yeah,
I think
the reason why I'm saying that we need to go back to the old school of politics, where you engage with the other side first and foremost by understanding who the other side is and what they want. Because even in the Treaty of the European Union, we always make reference to the European values. These are European values. If you want to embrace them, accept them, that's up to you. But when you deal with a country that's not part of this European project, you cannot judge them by what you call European values. You got to judge them and find a way how to engage with them using certain things that are of common understanding and commonly acceptable. Because if you read these reports from the European Parliament, every time when we analyze a country, there's no report where there's no reference to LGBT, for example, and gender ideology. Look, if whatever country in Western Europe wants to do that, I mean, at the end of the day, what can we do?
Now, as far as the Central Corridor is concerned, and this is just to wrap up the whole issue of interconnectivity as a peace-building project for the future in the European Union, we have had the Eastern Partnership, which we heard a lot about. This mainly concerns countries that we have spoken about: Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, countries of the Southern Caucasian. Now, we mentioned Russia a number of times. Now, the absence of Russia in this peace-building effort that has occurred in the last year is very visible. Although Russia refers to these countries as its backyard, as the faraway neighborhood, or the next, or the post-Soviet world. Russia looks at as its own sphere of influence at the moment, and nonetheless its absence was extremely visible. What are the chances of Europe to revitalize the Eastern Partnership, which, if I understand correctly, would make way for this geostrategic cooperation of interconnectivity?
I would say that this is the chance for Europe to be back in this game of adults, not of kids. You know, they like to play in a corner and say, these are my toys, you know, they're the best one. If you don't, you know, I'm not going to share my toys with you. No, we live in a world of realism. We agree to disagree on many things, but we can find certain common agreements and common ground that we could use, you know, to work on. So here's a map, for example, of this is Central Asia and
the Southern Caucasus.
So the interesting thing is this: EU is not engaging currently with Georgia because the European officials do not like the Georgian government, the current Georgian government, right? It doesn't matter who the party is. It's a fact. Recently, because of a resolution from the European Parliament about Armenia, in which my colleagues criticized Azerbaijan ceased any dialogue with the European Parliament. So out of the 3 countries in the region, we are not communicating with 2. Now, Armenia, it's in this situation that we just mentioned, right? Pashinyan, the current prime minister, he won the parliamentary elections, but he doesn't have a constitutional majority. So there's a lot of, you know, challenges that will have to be overcome. So the solution for Europe is to be back in this game of adults. In other words, you go, you talk to those people, you try to find common reasoning, common understanding, common ground to build things. Do you think this European project after the Second World War just appeared out of nowhere? Imagine that 2 countries decimated each other, France and Germany. Millions of people were killed on each side.
Both sides, yeah.
But like few years after the Second World War, Schuman had this vision that we call right now the Schuman Plan, you know, but that plan did not appear out of thin air. Okay, there were discussions and meetings and things like that. But if you read their memoirs, you will see that even they had problems meeting with each other initially because everybody was blaming them for being traitors, for, oh, you're French, why are you meeting with the Germans, and so on and so forth, right? But they were wise enough to look in the future, not in the past. This is exactly what we need to do right now. You might not like the government from Kazakhstan, from Turkmenistan, from Tajikistan. It doesn't matter. Engage with them. It is the only way, you know, to even adjust, I would say, and improve their behavior if you engage with them. If you're not engaged with them, do you know who does? China. I mean, I talk to a lot of diplomats and peers, you know, from these national parliaments, and everybody's telling me exactly the same thing, regardless if the person is from Asia or from Africa. You, the Europeans, every time when you come here, you're just doing this. Oh, you got to do this, you got to do this. You're not good. You do European values, you got to embrace them. Well, when China comes, they say, hey, what do you need? Money? Here's money. Labor? We bring labor. Whatever. So we need to go back to exactly the kind of diplomacy that was employed, I would say, used in the 50s and 60s and 70s.
So we can say that we have the precedent we have the good example of the post Second World War order.
Exactly.
There is a very important driving force. There is a necessity because the old world order seems to break down, to say the least. There is something new to be built.
I think it's crippled.
It's crippled. Yeah, I was looking for the word.
The new world order. I don't know what to say. I'm kind of,
We are so the only thing we are looking for. We have the plan. We have the middle corridor and the win-win arrangement where everybody can benefit from it. We are looking for the Schumanns and the Adenauers and the De Gasperis of the day who can make it happen.
This is the chance of our generation, by learning from the good things that happened in the past, to apply today. I mean, the more I read about these projects, because it was not something that I invented. Okay, I read a lot and I talked to people.
It's a blueprint, yeah.
And understanding what happened at the end of the 40s, beginning of 50s, with this, or how the idea of the European project started, I think we have a great chance as a united Europe here to lead the way, because we've been there, done that, and we can prove that by engaging economically, first and foremost, we can bring prosperity. If you bring prosperity, you can have a long and lasting peace.
That's a beautiful way of concluding this discussion. I'm sure we will discuss this in the future, as this is a very long-term plan, and it appears that a lot has to be done in the European institutions to make it happen. Christian Tereș, thank you very much for your time and for discussing this very important initiative and concept. Thank you so much. Goodbye.